It's such a gorgeous summer day that I thought I would move the podcast out here on the porch. You're going to hear wind chimes and birds, and I can hear the cows down in the pasture, and the wind's blowing things around too. So it's just part of the ambiance of being outside here. So I hope you enjoy the episode here in a different environment. So here out on the farm, we talk about seeds, and we can talk about people planting seeds metaphorically, where they want the seeds signify an idea that was planted that hopefully will bear fruit later in the future. And when we moved here, we planted a lot of fruit trees, and it took years for them to mature and to produce any fruit, but we've been able to pick pears and apples, and we've enjoyed that. But what really makes us happy is that knowing that many years after we're even gone, that those trees will still produce fruit for people in the future. And so it makes us think about our own legacy, and because we're like those fruit trees, the things that we've learned and what we've become is things that should be shared and passed down to others, like our own legacies. And our legacy has value because we are always useful to God. Hi, I'm Annice, and welcome to Drawing the Spirit, where art therapy meets your soul. We are going to start, as we usually do, with some deep breaths. So let's take some air in slowly through your nose, and then breathe slowly out through your mouth. And continue to breathe slowly while you think about the first two episodes of Purpose that you watched. We started off with a little story about butterflies, and then we moved into the cycles of our lives, and now we're moving into the purpose, the legacy of our lives. So let's do one more deep breath, and slowly out. There. Hopefully the wind's not going to blow us around too much here. We do the breathing exercises to help us focus and calm our minds and quiet our thoughts so that we can just relax and feel and hear the Spirit and receive the message that we're going to be given today. So now that we have done that and we're ready to go, let's talk about purpose, the legacy years. And it's not just for older people. Legacy, you work on your legacy your whole life, just like you do your purpose. And the legacy is what we've learned and experienced that makes us who we are. And we can also learn from other people's legacies as well. There are so many wonderful stories about people in the Bible and their legacies that we can learn from. And I recently read some articles about a few women and their legacies that I would like to share with you too. These were two women, and they didn't know each other. They weren't even from the same place, but their story was almost identical. They both had been released from their callings at their church. They had served about 20 to 30 years. The church was, or both of their churches was, had switched to different policies and goals. They wanted to be more modern and progressive, so they were trying to make changes for that reason. And the women were, after serving 20 and 30 years in various callings, you knew they were prayer warriors. And they had seen a lot of their prayers materialize in the form of miracles. And after I read their articles, I thought, what a waste, of all of the gifts that God had bestowed on them and all the experiences that they had and all of the knowledge that they possessed as well. And there they were, without callings, and they really wanted to serve God, to continue to serve God. So they had to reach out and find other places outside of their church to do that. Although one of them did find a position in the nursery, passing out the snacks. So that was just a shame, I felt, to waste all of their spiritual insights and so on. But I do commend them on their faithfulness to want to continue to serve God, regardless of their age or anything, circumstances like that. And and God uses people regardless of age. I mean, it's just puzzling to me because according to the Bible, God has no preference for age, young or old, or experience or no experience. And we can look in the Bible at all of the different people that he used. I mean, we can look at David, who, when he grew up, became the king of Israel, but when he was just a boy, he fought and killed Goliath the giant. And Samuel served in the temple with Eli when he was just a young boy, and he was entrusted with a great prophecy. And Timothy also served at a young age. And likewise, God used people who were elders as well. Abraham and Sarah were parents, became parents for the first time in their 90s, birth of a great nation. Anna the prophetess was in her 80s when she was still praying and doing God's work in the temple. And she recognized Jesus when he was born as the Messiah and Son of God, and she was only one of two people who were able to do that. Noah was 500 years old when he was asked to build the ark, and 600 years old when the flood occurred. Moses was 80 years old when he was chosen to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. So these examples show us that God sees potential and purpose in everyone at any age. He doesn't care how old you are. He just cares whether you're obedient and faithful to him. And you can do that at any age. So why does God pick people at certain ages and certain times? And I ask him that question too. I ask him why he chose me for this assignment at this time in my life. I had just retired from teaching and thought I would get to take it easy and relax, but he had other plans for me because I have aligned my life with his, or my will with his will, and so he took me at my word and he's decided to bestow an assignment on me at this age. So when I asked him, why he chose me at this time, I received my answer and my inspiration from the story of Moses. As you know, Moses had been raised in Pharaoh's house by his daughter, and because of that, he was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. If you look in Acts 7:22, it talks about how skilled he was in combat, how strong he was physically, how educated, it said that he was mighty in his words. He was just a very powerful and accomplished person. And so in his mind, because of all of this, he thought that, he would be God's first choice to lead the people out of slavery. But Moses also had his own way of doing things and tended to take things into his own hands. Do you remember in the last video where I quoted a passage that said you only are one bad decision away from becoming a totally different human being? Well, there was one decision that Moses made that changed who he was and his entire life. He had gotten angry with an Egyptian soldier who had hit a Hebrew slave, and in the process had killed a soldier. And that one decision made Moses a murderer, and it changed everything about his life. He had to run into the wilderness, or flee into the wilderness and hide because Pharaoh wanted to kill him because of what he had done to the soldier, and the people had turned against him, and even God just couldn't use him at that time the way things were. So while he was in the wilderness, he got married and he had children, became a shepherd, and just lived a very quiet existence for 40 years. And then God comes back into his life and asks him if he would at that time lead his people out of slavery. And at this time Moses was 80, and he responds, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" In Exodus 3:11, it talks about how he states that he is just weak, that he has a stutter, he can't talk very well, he can't walk very well, he's using a cane. But Moses had changed in more ways than just the physical, and you can see that difference in the way, in the words that he speaks to God. That he goes from thinking he's the best choice for God to choose as a leader to asking God, who am I that God would use me? And you can see that as a sign of humility and a change of attitude. And God says, now you're ready. Now I can use you. And the difference being that Moses was not relying on his military strategy or his strength or his plans. He was going to do what God wanted him to do and rely on God, put his faith into God, and follow his plan and purpose for his life. And purpose requires preparation and timing. And we can get into trouble when we don't wait on God and we don't follow his guidance. And a perfect example is a really awful field trip experience that I had when I was teaching second grade. We went to a local animal refuge, which was always a very fun trip. But that year I had a different student, and he at least made things more interesting. I'll give him that. But I had a new student in my class just for a few days, but I kept telling the principal, this is not the proper placement for him. He should be in a smaller class where there was a lot more adult supervision. I had 18, sometimes 20 students in my class, and they had to be fairly independent for 8-year-olds. But he would do things like eat crayons and do things that was not, appropriate for a boy of his age. And so he came the week we were to go on the field trip, and our policy at the school was to not let children off campus for several weeks till we could get to know them. We needed to be able to predict their behavior to make sure that they were going to be appropriate and follow instructions and not run away or do anything like sometimes they would try to do. So the mother got very angry about that, and she convinced the principal to let him go on the field trip anyway. Well, I had to voice my objections to that I just didn't feel like he was mature or ready in any way. He didn't follow any instructions, and that was vital when you're out in the woods with wild animals. And they weren't in enclosures like at the zoo. There were sometimes just a simple fence between the children and the animals, so they had to be able to follow directions and be safe. So I was overruled. So then I requested that the mother or someone from the family come along on the field trip and stay with him as his companion and caregiver and make sure that he would be safe. So that morning, no one showed up. So we went ahead and went on the field trip. And he kept wandering off in the woods and off the path. So I eventually just had to hold his hand the entire time. Lucky kid, huh? So we were fine until we got to the panther exhibit, and then things changed. The guide had told us about the panthers, and she was ready to move on down the path to the next animal exhibit. And I had let go of this child's hand just for a minute to help some other students down the steps of the platform, because the platform was up high. It was like a deck, and it had an observation portion to it that was just like some wood slats that were that were apart enough to where you could look through the slats and see the panthers, which were down below us. So I let go of his hand just for a minute, and then I heard screaming and crying behind me. I looked behind me. I could not believe what I saw. That child had gotten on his stomach, and he had crawled over to the edge of the platform and wedged himself in between the floor and the railings up above, and his head was stuck in between two of the observation railings. And I tried my best to get his head out. I turned it from side to side and pushed in his ears a little bit, but he was stuck in there pretty good. I just couldn't get him to get him free. And the other children were upset that had stayed with me, and someone had said, oh, the panthers are going to jump up and get us. So there were some of them crying and afraid, and I realized what what a difficult situation we were in, because there I was out in the woods with the children. I had the one, he said he was having trouble breathing because he was wedged to the floor on his belly, and I was using my cell phone to call the office, but I just kept getting their voicemail, and so I'm praying for help here. Finally, I had to just trust a couple of my students to run down the path and find the guide. And she came back, but she didn't have a radio or anything to call for help. So then she had to go all the way back up to the main building. And she came back with a couple of maintenance men who had a saw. Well, when I was going to school and being trained as a teacher, I just didn't think they prepared us for this at all. I thought there should have at least been a class called Terrible Field Trips 101 that would give you some kind of a heads up for situations like this. But with kids, it's just hard to predict anyway. And I had prepared what I thought was all the right things. In my backpack, I had a first aid kit, and it had Band-Aids, and it had the little packages of antibiotic ointments. So if anybody fell and skinned their knee or their elbow, I was prepared for that. If the weather turned rainy, I had those little plastic rain capes. I was prepared for that. I had tissues for runny noses and baby wipes to clean their hands off before lunch, but I never thought to pack a saw. Well, the maintenance men did a good job. They very carefully cut the wood around my student's head and freed him, and he was all right. But the only thing he had to say for himself was he was just trying to see the kiddies better. That child had no idea of the danger that he had put himself in, and it just upset me thinking what could have happened. Had he been a little smaller, he could have scooted out off of that platform and fallen into the pit below. And the fall could have killed him, or the panthers could have attacked him. I mean, that field trip could have had a very, very sad ending to it. And I was eager to get back to school to tell the principal what a really fun day we had. And I also hung around outside her office because I wanted to hear the conversation she was going to have with that child's mother. Because I had tried to warn them that this child was not ready for an outdoor experience like this. He wasn't mature, he didn't follow instructions, and he just, shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with. And this is what can happen to us when we push ahead and we don't wait for God's timing, and we don't wait for Him to prepare us properly, when we don't listen to His guidance or even ask for it. And we just don't consider the things that we need to consider before we make decisions for ourselves, and in this case, make decisions for other people who are depending on us to make the right decisions. And sometimes just being prepared can take years, like it did for Moses. And, God knew that Moses wouldn't have been the right person to free the Israelites at that time. But he knew when he was 80 he would, because he would be relying on God, not on himself. And even to part the Red Sea took an amazing amount of faith that Moses had when he was 80. So God knows the right thing in the right time for all of us. And it's a similar story with me. God had prepared me for my purpose and later in life here. And so when I had asked him why now, that was my answer too, is that, well, now you are ready, because he knew that I would be obedient and do what he asked me to do. And I thought about how Moses responded, to God too, because he was thinking, well, when I was younger, I thought I was the better choice then. Well, that's kind of what I thought too, because when I was younger, I did public speaking and fundraising as a volunteer for a children's organization. And I thought, well, then I was much better at it because I had a younger brain. And a younger brain has better mental mental clarity, and I don't need all the notes and prompts that I need now. But that's just not what God's priority is. He just wanted someone who was going to love the people and want to help people, and to be obedient and deliver the message and do things that he would want me to do. And so like Moses, I'm finally the person that I needed to be. And so many of us are like Moses in that way. So the main thing is that the podcast is helping people. And it's not about me or fancy backgrounds or, being perfect or anything like that. It's just, I do my best, but ultimately I am who I am at this time in my life. And I'm just a real person speaking to real people like you about real issues and concerns that we have in our lives. And we can help each other with those things, with God's help, of course, too. So I think that God wanted me to have so many different experiences also. So I had to have time for that as well when I was younger, because having different experiences and meeting different kinds of people in different situations allowed me to know and understand people. And I could talk to them, about my experiences as well, and help people, by sharing all the things that I've gone through that worked out or even didn't work out. You can learn from those mistakes as well. But I just want people to know that, God is proud of you, and you can become a person that you can be proud of and be happy with. And God sees us for who we really are. He created us, and so he knows the glorious beings that we are and can be, because we can always continue to grow and be better. And I just have like a little word of caution to be careful of the people and influences that you allow in your life when you are trying to fulfill your purpose. That we want to not listen so much to other people unless we are sure that those are the people that God has sent to us. Because sometimes people may not be able to really see the real you, and that's because we are influenced by our own thoughts and beliefs and feelings when we look at other people. And some people may even see you or themselves through their own darkness and their dark hearts, and they might not be able to see your light or understand your purpose and the things that God is trying to do in your life. So we want to be careful with that, because anyone who's going to try to mislead you or who sees you as anything less than the divine being that God has created you to be is only showing their own lack of true spiritual connection to God and his grace. So we just want to make sure that we are not listening to anybody but God and certainly the people that he sends to us. And something else that I need to add when you're fulfilling your purpose is to know that sometimes God is going to ask things of you. He may ask us to move sometimes to a different place. The opportunities that we need, the room to grow and things like that may not be where we currently are, or maybe we've outgrown where we are. We've done what we needed to do where he's placed us. And we can see in the scriptures where that happened to many people. God would say, oh, it's time to move, and they would pack up the tents and the animals and the families, and they would go where he sent them. And they usually prospered, or at least were there for safety reasons. And I know that God's done that to me many times. He's moved me to different places. And he may ask you to leave a group of people. He might ask you to leave behind certain habits or activities. He might tell you to walk away from things that are familiar and comfortable to you. But I can testify to you that God's just leading you to something and someplace better, because that's what I have experienced anyway. So hear God in this, and don't stay in places or among people who do not support you in your God-given purpose. Don't let people try to clip your wings and keep you small or put you in a box like the women in the story I told you earlier, whose church just, had taken them out of their callings and then just wanted them to disregard the gifts and abilities and years of experience that they had and just, pass out animal crackers in the nursery. And while there's nothing wrong with that, if that's what you feel that you should be doing, if you feel like that's the place for you, but if you feel that God is calling you to continue to use your abilities and the gifts that He gave you, because He gave them to you for a reason, and they don't have an expiration date on them. So let God guide you to a place like He did those two women in the story, where you can use the things that you've learned and be who you are meant to be, and to continue to do His work if that's what He's calling you to do. And don't be afraid to step out. Have courage to follow God. He's not going to mislead you. And remember the seeds that we talked about earlier. You can't grow from a seed into a magnificent tree if you don't have a positive environment, if you don't have everything that you need to grow. I mean, trees need water and nutrients and sunshine and room to grow and place their roots everywhere. And you need those things too. You need learning opportunities and resources and people who believe in you and encourage you and just cheer you on. And God wants those things for you because He gave you the purpose. So of course He wants you to fulfill it. And He loves you and wants the best for you. So don't accept anything less than God's best. And live in faith like the daughter and son of God that you truly are. And follow God in fulfilling your purpose and building your legacy for future generations. You are never too young or too old to fulfill your purpose and to start building your legacy. You're going to be awesome, so just stay that way. Thank you for joining me today outside. I hope it was a great experience for you. Also, I promised a art therapy activity after the third video, which is this one. So look for it. It will be, let me grab my little butterfly here. We are going to make a butterfly, or actually you as a butterfly, and we're going to talk about and write or illustrate all of your wonderful qualities. And you will be a beautiful butterfly, or a handsome butterfly if you're a male butterfly. You will need your sketchbook, your markers, glue stick, scissors, and a piece of copy paper to make the butterflies out of. So it'll be easy. I'll show you a very easy way to make them, and it'll be a lot of fun. So I'll see you there.